Welcome back to the Qt Developer, or Qt Developer. Can go hand in hand. So today we're going to look at the QList, the QList class. Take a look at a few of these public functions in here, how to create the QList, how to add to the QList, how to check the size, how to erase. We'll examine some of these methods. So why don't we go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we need to do is we're going to need to include a few libraries. A QList, a QString literal, and the debug, so we can actually see what's going on. So the first step to actually create a QList, let's go ahead and start with our QDebug. Now I'd like to start by actually just writing down exactly what I'm doing. So when I output to the console, it'll tell me kind of what's going on. So let's just say welcome to Qt. Then I'm going to create a QList and a templated list, so I need to add a type. So we're going to add a type of integer. We'll call it int list. And then if I go ahead and assign some values to it, let's be really creative and make it 1 through 5. There we go. That's how I initialize the list. Now, if I want to add to the list, I can go ahead and add by appending. And let's go ahead and add 6, or append 6. Now let's take a look at what the list actually appears by just printing it out. There we go. Go ahead and build it. And let's take a quick look. There. So here's our list. Here's the output. And there's the contents of the list right in here. So now let's go back and continue on. So now, what I'd like to do is I'd actually like to grab the very first item. And how I can do that is I can say create a variable end front, and I can assign that to the int list dot front. Now let's go ahead and let's output this. Whoops, got to work on that spelling. I'm sure that won't be the first time. So let's output the front of the list. And let's see what happens with this. So go ahead and run that real quick. And look at that. Gets the first item. There are some pretty neat little methods that come along with this list. So the next thing is if I want to check it, see if the list is empty. So let's go ahead and say, is the list empty? I'll create that variable as a Boolean. And I want to call the isEmpty method. Here's the isEmpty method. And let's go ahead and output this and see if this is empty. Is the list empty? And then we'll check it. There. And I'll check it again. There. Now it's checking to see if that list is empty, and it isn't. So it'll return a false. So this isEmpty method, right here, we'll check to see if that list contains any items. Now continuing on, some of these are fairly basic, but it's nice to implement them and to call them really, and to see what happens. Now the next item that we'll check is we want to check the size. How many items are actually in this list? And there is a size, so it's called n size, and I'll check that. So here's the size. And let's output this. Let's see. Let's say list size and end size. Go ahead and do that again. And it gives us 6, which is the actual number we have. So far, everything's working pretty well. Now we'll get into a few more little exciting methods, but these are important to know, calling these specific methods. Now, the next thing is, what if I want to remove something from the list? So now let me take a look at int list dot remove, and I want to remove what? Whoops. Oh. I want to remove what? Just 1. So remove 1, and then I can pass it the index. And now if I check, whoops, now I'm going to check to see what was removed. So we'll say remove item with value 2. And then I'm going to check the list. So now when I print it, that list, can you guess what's going to be removed? If you guessed 2, you were correct. The second item. That's pretty good. So now I'll take a look and move on. And now I want to insert. So now I want to insert. So let's take int list, and I want to insert at a specific position. So I can say insert, and I want to insert at the position 2, 15. One thing that's pretty handy that I like are these tooltips in Qt Creator. So now, if I choose to print this out, I want to print out which item was inserted. At what? Index 2. And let's see, int list. Whoops. Too fast. Okay. So now, let's go ahead, print this out, and look. The item was inserted. But notice where it was inserted. Right after the second position. Okay, so now we're moving along. Now, what if I want to actually go through all the items in the list? What are the things that I could do? So let's go ahead and turn off some of these. Disable that so we don't get a large printout. But I'll keep my list, the list print, which is right here. So this will be printed so we can see what the list is. Now, I want to go through all the items and print them. So in order to do this, I need what's known as a QList iterator. So I can create a QList, whoops, not liar, a QList int, that's the template parameter. And if I do press 2 colons, I need to have I like to have a const iterator. And let's call it iter. Now, I need to kind of loop through using this iterator. So I set the iterator equal to the int list const begin, and I have to use const begin because it's a const iterator. I can then begin to set the iterator to the very first item. Now, I'm going to check to make sure it's not at the end. And then I just increment the iterator. And from here, let's go ahead and debug. I want to make sure I know which iterator it is. And let's make it. Oh, I forgot to do something. We'll keep that. I need to know what the item is. So I like to use variables. The more variables I use, for right now, I can always come back and clean it up. But the more variables I use, it makes it easier for debugging. Just like I mistyped something right now. So what I want to do now is I basically want to create a reference to an item which is equal to the data, in the iterator. Now I could just print this out, but like I said, sometimes I like to create the actual variable and then come back and clean it up. I look at this as a sketchbook, and right now, maybe a little messy, but at least I can see what's going on and I can debug a little easier. So if anything were to go wrong, it makes it easier to debug. And then here it is. Here's my constant iterator, and it will loop through every single one, every item, and print it out. Now, if I were to take this and do this, this will do the same thing. And I will actually run it again and we can compare. You see? So look at that. See? Same results. Whoops. But I like to have this extra variable and come back and debug. These are fun to have. Alright, so now let's do something fun. What I want to do is I want to create a list and then print out to the console a string. And the string is going to be some ASCII art. I'll print out the word ASCII in ASCII art. Now, let's see. So the first thing I need to do is I want to create a QList. And I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. I'd like to create a new QList. And that QList is going to be using QStrings. And I'll call it my string list. There we go. And now I need to populate the string list. So I do have something prepared. Go ahead and skip through this a little bit, because to type all this out takes quite some time. So here is my ASCII art. And I want to push all of these items into my string list. And then from here, now what I'm going to do is now I'd like to print each one, okay, print each one of these strings which are in my QList to the console. So my string list dot size, and I'll go ahead and increment Q. And now is when I begin to debug. My QDebug, and then my string list. And I'm using the @ This is important. I'm using @ instead of these brackets. And I'm using those because Qt recommends using the @ It's a constant, and it'll help with crashing. It helps for debugging. It'll send an assert or emit an assert. So let's go ahead and see what happens. What do you think is going to happen? Think it'll work? Let's find out. Oh, that's pretty neat. There it is, my ASCII art. So this was QLists. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave some comments. Any suggestions? Something you'd like to see in the future? I plan on doing a series of some of these containers, QList being the first in the list. Get it? QList, the list. Thank you for watching. Take care.